Welcome back. Another day, another controversy involving the Justice Department. This one's mind-boggling. Just yesterday, we heard that the prosecutors in the Roger Stone case wanted Stone to get up to 9 years in prison. That was their recommendation for sentencing guidelines after he was convicted of 7 federal charges, including witness tampering and even lying to Congress. But today, in a stunning reversal, Justice Department officials backtracked on their own sentencing recommendations by the prosecutors by saying that Stone deserves prison, but not giving any indication for how long. A senior official, you can think of that as Barr, reportedly saying the original sentencing wasn't communicated to DOJ leadership, even though prosecutors followed the proper channels when it was transmitted to the judge and signed off by the top prosecutor in the district. Another official was quoted as saying 9 years was excessive. Now, it is worth noting, the change of heart at DOJ, it comes soon after the president pressed send on this tweet, and I quote, "This is a horrible and very unfair situation. The real crimes were on the other side as nothing happens to them. Cannot allow this miscarriage of justice!" Exclamation point. But for what it's worth, the president says he didn't ask the DOJ to change the sentence. I'll let you decide whether it's just a random coincidence. And now, 4 of the prosecutors have all withdrawn from the Stone case after the DOJ undercut their recommendations. Well, joining us now to discuss this and more, former federal prosecutor Mimi Rocah. Mimi's also running in the Democratic primary for the district attorney in Westchester County. And Mimi, literally, there was 5 different stories we could have gotten to, but I'm just going to get to the top 2, and there's a common thread line. Walk us through this, because there was some really serious charges. The recommendation the prosecutors laid out doesn't mean the judge was going to agree with them, but for DOJ to come in and cut the legs out from their own U.S. Attorney's Office, if not unprecedented, very, very uncommon, right?
Unheard of, unprecedented. I'm going to say unprecedented. And I was in the DOJ for 16 and a half years and have a window into time before that. I know of no other case where this happened. This is a case where the prosecutors sought a sentence of 7 to 9 years, I believe. It was in what's called the guideline range. Without getting too much in the weeds, it means it was a sentence that was recommended by these federal sentencing guidelines. It was completely appropriate for them to be asking for it, given the nature of the crimes, the seriousness of the crimes, the number of crimes that Roger Stone pled guilty to, right? Over a lifetime, essentially, of crime. And that doesn't mean, as you say, that the judge was going to give 7 to 9 years, but it means it was appropriate to ask for it. Maybe the judge would have, maybe they wouldn't. That would be up to the judge. Prosecutors make those requests all the time. For someone in Maine Justice to come in and the next day, after a presidential tweet criticizing it, to say, no, we're not going to ask for this sentence anymore, we're going to ask for something lower, shows, one, that the Department of Justice is intervening in cases that the Maine Justice, that it should not be intervening in. I mean, why is Roger Stone being treated differently than any other white-collar defendant? Why, do they intervene in all sentences of all white-collar defendants? No, absolutely not. No, the only reason he's being treated differently is because he's connected to Donald Trump. And number 2, because Donald Trump tweeted that, put his view out there, there is no way for this to look like anything other than favoritism, pressure applied by the president, which is just an absolute corruption of the system.
Now, for anyone out there who says, well, maybe, the U.S. Attorney's Office here, they went rogue, you answered the first part of that, which is it's in the guidelines. But secondly, they're not required to go check if Barr approves. In fact, that wouldn't be the common practice, right?
No. In most cases, U.S. attorneys' offices have their own review process within the office. And a sentence like this, frankly, in most cases, if the name was not Roger Stone, wouldn't even necessarily be approved by the U.S. attorney, by the top prosecutor. There'd be some review process. It's not just the people who are the quote-unquote line assistants handling the case. But it would go, in this case, it would certainly, I would think, go up to the U.S. attorney, the head prosecutor. But it would not need to go to the Department of Justice, but for the fact that this is a high-profile case. So again, whether they went to the Department of Justice or not, I think is beside the point for approval ahead of time, because they shouldn't have had to, because it's only being treated differently because it's Roger Stone and he's connected to Donald Trump.
And it speaks volumes that now 2 of the prosecutors have basically said, I quit not the Department of Justice, but quit this case here, and they're going to be moving
Right.
on.
Well, I read some conflicting things, and maybe this will become clarified, that they not only withdrew from the case, but that they may have actually resigned from the Department of Justice altogether. I think we need some clarification. But either way, it is line prosecutors who should not be in this position in the first place of standing up and saying something here happened that is really out of the ordinary and wrong. It should be the political appointees like the U.S. Attorney and their executive staff who protect the career prosecutors from this kind of political interference.
One of the things to the layperson out there is we've had to, over the last really year or so, even post-Sessions, look at the Department of Justice in a different way than most of us did. Sure, the Attorney General is appointed, by the President. We get that, and he or she is going to pick it from their own political party. But bar whether it was basically rewriting the Mueller report here, invalidating a lot of concerns, and clearly not putting his thumb but his whole fist on the scales of justice time after time for the president. And then what I was originally going to talk to before this story came down today was that he's clearing a direct pipeline to Rudy Giuliani to forward concerns directly to the Department of Justice over whatever Rudy's harebrained scheme is that he's kicking up with his Ukrainian investigations. They're not even going through the pretenses of pretending that there's no more church and state. It's like DOJ's become a political arm. I got to figure for somebody who spent a career there, that's got to be more than demoralizing.
It really is. I mean, like I said, I was there for 16 and a half years under Republican administrations, Democratic administrations. And the reason for this is it's kind of like the Army. You don't serve the president when you're in a career civil service job like that. You serve the institution. And even the political appointees, the U.S. attorneys, would say, I am here to serve the Department of Justice, the rule of law, the independence of that institution, not the particular president. And so while I'm not saying it was perfect and there were things around the edges that changed for sure, but you had a feeling that cases were not being brought or not brought because of political reasons. No longer can we say that. We now see both, it looks like, the Department of Justice going out of its way to protect Trump's cronies, allies, and perhaps, as you mentioned, with the Bidens, to use the power of the Department of Justice to at least investigate his political opponents. And that is just really terrifying. And it's really more a sign of authoritarianism than a democracy.
And not that we need another example, and this may be more on the diplomatic side, but it also obviously had to do with legal. You see both Vindman and Sondland being shown the door for filing protocols. Right. In responding to a subpoena and testifying under oath truthfully, and the other one for being a whistleblower and again following the proper protocols right now. It is a very dangerous time that we're in right now, especially if elections go certain ways and somehow this gets codified as acceptable or even legal.
That's right. And this idea that people were explaining away Vindman and his brother's firing as policy differences, or that now they're going to try to explain this Department of Justice decision on the Stone sentence as, well, they didn't follow protocol. This is normalizing, as you say, dangerous behavior. While it is okay for the president to make hiring and firing decisions, for the Department of Justice to make decisions about sentences, requests, none of it, we have to look at the motivation. I mean, we do. We cannot just say, well, they can do whatever they want. It cannot be driven by political motives. It shouldn't be anyway. I mean, that seems to be what's happening. And that, to me, and I think what you're saying is that's the danger.
And finally, I want to bring it full circle. The judge in the Stone case, Judge Jackson, she's got a reputation as being pretty tough. She does not have to take the second iteration of whatever the guidelines or the recommended sentencing is going to be from DOJ now. She can decide, because she's going to be put in a really unique situation where they gave 2 different suggestions. She can make her own mind up or take either of the 2. She's not bound by the last offering, right?
Right, not at all. I mean, she's not bound by anything that the Department of Justice requests, and Judge Jackson, I think, has shown herself to be, she's the one who said truth and facts still matter during the Stone trial or some iteration of that. She's going to make her own mind up. I think she would have done that anyway, but she's definitely going to now because I think she's going to see that there are outside forces at work here. And she's going to start with making her own calculations under the guidelines, finding what it is, and then, like every other judge in every other case, stating why she's either going to follow the guidelines or not, and making a record so that then a court of appeals can review it. And that's how it happens in every case, which is why this is alarming, because this is being treated differently by the Department of Justice.
And then, of course, we have to worry about, will there be pardons be part of this conversation? But unfortunately, every time we talk, there's some kind of surreal thing going on. Mimi, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, everyone, with this administration, even the budget exposes here lies, hypocrisies from the guy living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to explain as we dig into the numbers after this.